So I started by turning a nice little square edge platter. The problem that I have is because of the size of this piece of wood, it's about 12 inches across, I can't really remount it to take off the tenon. So using, I guess, like a jam chuck, it's too flat for that. Trying to use a, like my coal jaws, it's just a little bit too wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a vacuum chuck together. I've got most of the parts. I started by putting a plan together. So I went to Ace, picked up all my parts, and we'll piece this together. I'm going to focus mostly on the air portion of this. I'll work on the actual chuck piece that sits on the headstock. But I know there's some good videos out there already for that, but I haven't seen a lot about the actual building of the air system. Alright, so here's the plan. Since I already have a vacuum pump for my wood stabilizing, I'll start with that. At the other end is going to be my lathe, as you can plainly see with my great artistic skills here. The manifold is going to be fairly simple. We'll start with a set of T's that will give me an input and output and the ability to control the airflow and a gauge. On the end of each piece we're going to put air hoses. One is going to be for the intake, the other is going to be for the outlet, and we'll be using air compressor parts for some of this. The most important piece of this is going to be the bell valve. This is to control the airflow. And I will put a gauge on the end just so I can see whether I'm losing air or not. The line to the vacuum pump will be a static line with air compressor parts at the end. The other side will be air compressor parts so I can detach it. The main idea for this is with the vacuum pump running, I can leave the valve open, which will draw air through the least resistant, which is going to be that point with minimal airflow coming in through the headstock. When I close the valve, it will force all the air to come in through the headstock, which will hold the piece in place. And here are all the parts laid out to build the manifold. All right, everything's wrapped in Teflon tape, so we will start assembling. All right. Good fit. This will just connect it right to the hose into here. All right, here at the headstock, I picked up a holdfast V802 vacuum adapter. This is pretty simple. It really just consists of a piece of threaded rod. It's got this end here that has a gasket on it that fits into your headstock and makes a seal at this point. You would then come behind with something like a you can get their chuck adapters, or you can make your own. We're making our own here. This will just basically fit over the top here, draws a vacuum through the headstock, and we'll get into the rest of that later. But the other piece that needs to be adjusted, so this is the bearing adapter for the end of this. So what we want to do is we want to set this in there snugly, feed it through the headstock, and we need to figure out how far we want this to go in here. So this piece will thread on, make a good seal, sets in there tight. We would then want to mark this. We'll give ourselves, so when this fits over it, I want to make sure that this sticks out a little bit. So I'm going to cut this probably about right here, give myself a little bit of extra threading so that I can fit this on and get it nice and tight. There's going to be more of a faceplate on this later, so I'm not worried about it. After cutting the rod, just put a piece of, just put a threaded nut on there, and just work this through to try to work out the burr on the end of the rod. That way you can re-thread it through the pieces that we removed. So I feel a little bit of a burr there. You can use a file. Alright, so we're going to mount this on a little piece of wood. I'm leaving this to the edge so that we can easily connect and disconnect, otherwise it'll bang up against the side. We'll just mark these. Attached. We're just going to want to bring this to about here. So connect this end in here, and this is going to be permanently mounted on that piece. Now I picked up a little hose clamp. Now this is fairly stiff when it starts, but once it starts to turn, it turns fairly well. I don't know if that's something that is going to loosen up over time. But what I don't want to happen is I don't want the hose to come off of this. So we'll keep an eye on that. And now back to the headstock. This piece will fit through the headstock. This piece will fit on the end. And as that gets cinched in there, creates a nice seal. And we'll need to build this out, but I'll pull this out before we do the next stage. I realize that in a shop like this, it's a bit of an oxymoron to say you want a clean and dust-free area, but you don't want to be sucking in a lot of stuff into your vacuum pump. So I kept the hose as long as I thought was necessary so that I can keep this out of the direct line of wood shavings, and I may try to put a housing or something in place to cover it and keep it somewhat secure. So with this connected, we'll plug it in and start drawing vacuum and just see how things hold up. Alright, so we'll start with this open, meaning that as it tries to draw vacuum, it's going to draw air out of this instead of out of this hose line. So start there. Got it connected into the vacuum pump. Vacuum pump is plugged in. Over there it's drawing a pretty decent vacuum. Over here, not so much. But as we close this, it starts to draw out of here. It's drawing a pretty decent vacuum already. Don't dare hold that for very long. But everything should be holding pretty well. We'll find out when we get the rest of this piece built.